These include unequivocal deductions concerning climate change in the form of global warming, rising sea levels, increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases, and melting ice sheets. The human influence on the climate system is evident from a variety of observations and analysis, while it is extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed temperature patterns and increases since the mid-20th century. Although skeptics cite climate variability, the long-term trend seems unmistakable, and there is no excuse for complacency. The Orthodox Church, allow me to say, is blessed to have a leader in the person of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, who has been extremely sensitive in those concerns throughout his ministry, concentrating on raising ecological awareness and protecting the natural environment, a primary goal of his pastoral mission. A parenthesis here, I have been with the Patriarch 2 weeks ago in Greece, in Thessaloniki, for 10 days. And he spoke in numerous occasions. Every day we have 5 or 6 events. Imagine 10 days, there were 60 events. The Patriarch spoke in each one of them. And there was always a reference to the environment, always, in one way or another. Even sometimes when then after that we have a discussion, I said, sometimes seems a bit disconnected with the rest of the content. He said, disconnected or not, I had to say that. That's the attitude. As is well known, His All Holiness organized 8 international conferences, 5 summer seminars, and to date 1 Halki summit. Another parenthesis here. I have been in a number of these conferences, and Father John Chrysavgis has been in most of them. They started with Aegean Sea, moved to Black Sea, Adriatica, Danube River, Baltic Sea, the areas in the Northern Sea, Amazon, Mississippi. All of them were on board. Duration 1 week. I remember the one I was in the Baltic Sea. We started from Dansk, Sunday night, on board, 200 people. 200 people, scientists in the environment, prominent theologians, representing all kinds of faiths, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindus, Buddhists, people from the world of economics, people for the sustainable development, people dead set against sustainable development. We start the boat traffic, and we are the first stop in Estonia, in Tallinn. During this kind of trip, a continuous kind of discussion, presentations, and I remember the fierce conflict at the beginning. The groups that could not recognize the other. They said, we don't want to talk about anything about environment. No, we have to do that. The Patriarch said, wait, at the end of the week would be a better condition because people come to understand each other in a better way. So then we stopped in Tallinn, Estonia, because they had a model kind of environmental development. The tragedy, however, with the Baltic is this. You have Sweden, Norway, Finland with strict rules about environmental issues, especially waters being shed into the Baltic Sea. On the other side, you have Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Russia, Poland, doing At that time it was obvious, a tremendous damage. How? By having the material used for fertilization seeping through the ground and ending up in the Baltic Sea, causing an overwhelming development of the vegetable population of the Baltic Sea, and causing now a diminishing of the life of the fish there, the cod fish, by 90%. I mean, you can see what happened. So we went there, we stopped in Helsinki, and then in Sweden, and it was day and night, this type of discussion on the environment by top specialists. So count 8, 9 of them. And this shows the real substantive participation of the patriarch in this kind of development for the environment. So then we have this development, but what is now our more general response and responsibility? First, as we have already noted, several studies outline in detail the multitude of wide-ranging impacts that climate change could have. As a result, people living in already warm climates, coastal areas, and most dependent on agriculture and fishing for their subsistence will be most vulnerable and are expected to bear the brunt of climate because of this kind of change impacts. Moreover, people with lower income who are struggling for their survival will also be the least capable of assuming adequate measures to protect themselves from harmful effects. Therefore, the ecological problem of pollution is invariably connected to the social problem of poverty. Indeed, all ecological activity is ultimately measured and properly judged by its impact and effect upon the poor. This imposes a special burden and poses a heavy responsibility on us as persons of faith if we take seriously the Christian teaching to care for the disadvantaged and marginalized among us. Second, we are obliged to be concerned about the intergenerational distribution of rewards and impacts emerging from the ecological crisis. How will our actions of today affect the generations to come? Our children and grandchildren. We can pass ourselves today. How about tomorrow? How about 10 years later, 50 years later? Do we have the right to exploit the Earth's resources selfishly and carelessly while bequeathing the impacts of our actions, which according to the forecasts of climate change could be serious or even devastating? Studies clearly indicate the long-term impacts of today's greenhouse gas emissions. Many of the changes we are witnessing today are essentially irrevocable. To quote the International Panel in Climate Change report, most aspects of climate change will persist for many centuries, even if emissions of carbon dioxide are stopped. It is not too late to respond as people, as parishes, as a planet. We could steer the Earth toward our children's future. However, we can no longer afford to wait. We can no longer afford not to act. Third, as people of faith, and particularly as Orthodox Christians, we are, first and foremost, obliged and called to put our own household in order, We must address the environmental priorities and needs in our own parishes and among our own faithful. We must begin with prayer, invoking the grace of God on our initiatives, and praying even as we do on September 1st of every year for the preservation of God's creation. Nonetheless, alongside prayer, we can initiate education programs on all levels, from Sunday schools to catechetical instruction, as well as from the preaching of sermons to the preparation of materials. This focus renders itself especially fruitful for inter-parish and inter-Orthodox collaboration on a local, diocesan, and even national basis, so that every parish, both large and small, can at least embrace fundamental programs and opportunities for recycling energy and water conservation, as well as auditing of properties and facilities. A parenthesis again here. I would like to cite a specific example of something that could happen in a parish. I could name the parish, to be very specific. It's Orange, Connecticut. They had a beautiful church. It's a parish very close geographically to Yale University. And they were in need of a community center, which they didn't have. So they built a community center, following to the iota the prescriptions of saving the environment in every possible way, in terms of energy, in terms of building materials, in terms of everything possible and impossible. Then, that was not just an isolated event. It was a continuous teaching. And I was there on a Sunday after the application of this type of teaching, when the priest tells me, now I have to present to you some children here with some reports. I said, what reports? You will see, he said. So here comes a group of children. John, tell the Archbishop. Well, during the week, I turn off many of the lights in our house, which normally would burn without reason. Bravo. Do you know any number? Tens of times, even hundreds, he said. You can imagine, he said, why my parents kept the lights on. Bravo, I said. That's a good thing. Here comes the second fellow. Peter, I closed some faucets that let the water run for no reason. Bravo, I said. The consciousness of saving the water. Not generalities, you know, just specifics. Bravo, I said. The third person comes carrying a big box. That's the collection of the waste paper, he said, from my house. Good, I said. Another fellow comes. I could not carry what I collected in terms of plastic, he said, but I deposited it to the proper place to be collected by the authorities. This is a specimen of what can be done. Now, children that grow up that way, you can imagine how then, as they mature, how then they would be preservers of the environmental issues. Let me finish now. We assume these responsibilities of doing anything possible on a very specific level, but also on a general level. And not again, it is politically correct. We do so because it is the right thing to do, because we have chosen to bear the cross of Christ. We care for God's creation because we have been commanded to cultivate and care for the earth, and serve and to preserve the earth, Genesis 2. We recognize that this involves a certain sacrifice on our part that we must embrace a more ascetic and simple way of life, that we are called to care for and share with the least of our brothers and our sisters. Indeed, we know that what we do to our neighbor, we actually do to Christ himself, Matthew 25. This means that whatever we do to this earth, we do to heaven itself. We apply in a way on earth as it is in heaven. Thus we return to the theme of our conference, on earth as it is in heaven, putting our theology and ecology into practice. St. Paul tells us, we know that the whole creation has been groaning in travail together until now, awaiting with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God, the famous passage in Romans 8. We must commence this revelation in the local parish, learning to live in harmony with God's creation. As I have said some 10 years ago, the commitment of our Orthodox Church to protecting the environment must become a part of the local ministry of our parishes. Against much of the secular culture that surrounds us, our faithful must learn how to apply Orthodox theology and ecological principles to their lives. Bishops and clergy must teach them about the Eucharistic and ascetic ethos of our church tradition in order that our faithful may learn to give thanks to God for all things while treating the earth's resources respectfully and with sensitivity. Moreover, we must cultivate a liturgical ethos in our communities in order that sharing becomes central to our lives as Christians. Going from our participation in the sacraments into something that expands this kind of participation and sanctification to our environment. In his foreword to Greening the Orthodox Parish, published by Orthodox Fellowship of the Transfiguration, His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew remarked, "From the outset of our ministry, it has been our hope and prayer that the various ecological initiatives developed by the Ecumenical Patriarchate would result in the parallel creation of green parishes and green priests throughout the world." In our ecological conference under the guidance of the Ecumenical Patriarch in the Mississippi River, which ended up in New Orleans, in the last day, it was a speaker, a Jewish fellow, one of the very well-known people in the field of water science. I remember this utter surprise of the Patriarch and other people and myself. We were sitting together there listening when this top gentleman, top fellow, top scientist, and super specialist in hydrology said, in the final analysis, what we need today is spirituality. We couldn't believe that we heard the word. And he repeated it. We need spirituality as a component and as an ingredient to any approach of a serious solution to the ecological crisis. I congratulated him afterwards for the spirituality. He said, "Thank you. I am a believer in this kind of thing. This is what I'm working so passionately in the field of hydrology, waters." Dear friends, it is our sincere conviction that here in the United States of America, we have a wonderful opportunity to respond to this call. The choice is ours. Will we hear the word of God and obey it? Will we prove responsible stewards? The world is watching. The world is waiting. And the time flies ruthlessly. I dare to paraphrase, and that's a criminal sin for a biblical scholar, paraphrase a passage of St. Paul, but I do that for the sake of convenience here, from 2 Corinthians 6, when St. Paul said, "Behold, now is the acceptable time for action. Behold, now is the day of salvation of the environment." Thank you.
His Eminence has graciously accepted a few questions. So hold your hunger until we have the spiritual food first. Please. Yeah.
No comments?
Please.
Your Grace, Your Eminence, yes, excuse me. I would love to quote you at the local parish level on these issues of the environment, but I have a feeling that if I told my pastor that if he didn't want to put some initiative in the parish bulletin that it was against your will, he wouldn't receive it very kindly. So in my world, there's this thing I call parish lockout. Okay, and what I mean by that is this green business is not perceived by a lot of pastors as the church's business. And so I would just like you to comment on that, if you understand where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to one occasion of something that is of a gathering in the church and find a way to cut the electric light and the water. Just cut them and then tell the father that resists. How do you like that? In other words, what I'm saying is that we need to work. It's something of a problem that has to do with the fact that, in spite of the fact that we suffer a lot here in this country, especially water pollution and other things, however, this is not felt sometimes directly by the people. They have plenty of good water, they have plenty of good food, and in some places have a beautiful climate. They don't feel the difference. So it needs work. It's as if you try to educate for a special cause, and you need sometimes to start from 0 point, a tabula rasa, which has to be filled. There is no other way. We do that now. One other way would be to somehow issue encyclicals and other things to the parishes. These kind of things are having a result sometimes, not always. Sometimes people take the encyclical, don't read it, and that's it. So you have to return and just try again. That's the only answer I could give. Thank you. And it's just cite some example. That's why I mentioned the example. There are more than that example. Cite some example. Say why we can't do that in our parish. What are we going to lose?
Your Eminence, 2 weeks ago, President Kim from the World Bank met Pope Francis, and they agreed to establish an advisory group of faith for the World Bank. I'm wondering if you can comment on how you think this might be useful and whether or not the Orthodox Church might be willing to take part in such a thing.
Who was that?
The president of the World Bank, Jim Kim.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the World Bank has been a partner in the initiatives of the Patriarch. I remember in the Baltic Sea trip and in the Mississippi trip and other situations, they have been always. So, in a way, there were somehow, I was surprised by a dichotomy, if I may use this language, dichotomy between some people representing the financial world and just talking about sustainable development in a way that would be just not discussing any compromise, and people from the bank and this World Bank that were just supporting something different. So this is an initiative, whatever it happens, an initiative that if it points to an understanding by the World Bank or similar institutions, it's very useful because they are very instrumental. Now, one more thing, since you mentioned that, I don't know if you are familiar, there is a forum that happens in Switzerland. It's a basically economic forum in New York in order to honor September 11. Now, that was a conference attended by 1,200 people. In this conference, being basically by financial people, they were invited 45 people, theologians and people of the church, and we were there. And we were there very participant, very involved in the discussions. That's a good sign. So anything that could help that way would be very useful. Because many things depend on these big financial institutions.
Your Eminence, I bring you greetings from His Eminence, Cardinal World from the Archdiocese of Washington, who wanted to be here but couldn't be here. He sends you his greetings. I know you know him well. An observation, you mentioned secularization, and you could go today from kindergarten to a third-year degree in college and not once take a course in morals, ethics, or virtues, and we're surprised that we don't have virtuous, ethical, and civil people in our society. It seems to me that a big part of this equation is very complex, as you know, is including in the public school system a means by which we can educate new generations of people to reject individualism, as you so mentioned. So thank you for that point.
Thank you. Cardinal World is a good friend and someone who is very sensitive to issues like that. Would you please convey my greetings back multiplied? This is really an issue. In essence, there is an idea, I don't want to now to sow seeds of disturbance, but in essence, the environmental crisis is an anthropological crisis. So how about anthropological studies in the universities that deal with this aspect of human beings doing what they are doing? That's an important issue. The human being is the...
Thank you very much, Your Eminence, for your presence and for your words of wisdom.
Thank you. If I may add one more thing, which has nothing to do with the topic. It's a linguistic phenomenon. I noticed in one of the slides here the term anthropocenter. I said, here we are. We have a problem in the English language, as you know. It's a perennial problem that appeared in the last decades. There is only one word, the word man, indicating man and woman. In other languages, you normally have a separate word, not in English. In Greek, you have the beautiful word anthropos. You have anthropology, anthropocentric, all these kind of things. Anthropos for both sexes, and then you have anir, man, and yini. Can we make an effort to introduce the term anthropos in English, domesticate, rehabilitate the term, and making a term that is very good for any unisex and other kind of discussion? Just anthropos. We say human being. Sorry about that. It's not the best linguistic construction. Thank you again for listening and being with you. Okay, sure. Yeah. Father Bender suggests that we bless the food from this place as we are our Father.
All together, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Glory to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forever, and to the ages of ages. Amen. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. Holy Master, bless.
Christ our God, bless the food and the drink of your servants. Bless the beloved people present here. Enhance our endeavors and made us worthy of serving you, especially in the issue of the environment, glorify you, and helping our fellow human beings to progress and share happiness and progressive life as long as they are on this earth. Amen. Thank you.